So if there's anything that the college football playoff rankings have brought us since their inception, really, it's been great debate, right? We get to argue and we get to bicker back and forth about who should be where, and this team doesn't need to be ranked above this team, and vice versa, and you name it. There's just so many talking points that surround the college football playoff and the rankings. And frankly, I feel like a lot of the talking points are valid, I guess, when you talk about, but when you talk about teams like the Notre Dame Miami comparison or others, that we've seen, the issue that I have, and here's the thing, because I have had some Notre Dame fans that heard the episode a few weeks ago and was like, man, you're just, you're open about being a Notre Dame hater and this and that. And I will say this. I like Marcus Freeman. I think Notre Dame's a very good football team. What I will say, though, is quit kidding yourself if you don't think that Notre Dame gets preferential treatment from the College Football Playoff Committee. Like, don't kid yourself. Don't sit here and, it's like a saying that, my dad used to use a lot growing up. Don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining, okay? Like, don't gaslight people to think. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Notre Dame's a good football team. Now, they have 2 losses, and one of those losses happens to be to Miami. But let's not think for a second that this isn't some kind of brand bias. And that's the thing. The debate of the Notre Dame, the Miami thing, we'll get into that a little bit here. And because I've had some Notre Dame fans come at me on Facebook. Like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, like social media, I've had Notre Dame fans come after me. Well, here's the thing, though, because when we get into the argument of losses, and that's what we're comparing, and we're not talking about just a resume, like a wins, as far as wins go. We're talking about losses. I don't like the comparing losses. I don't like that, because either way, it can kind of be spun both ways, because somebody that supports Notre Dame in the playoff will be able to say, well, look at the quality of Notre Dame's losses. They got a ranked Miami team, and they have a A&M team that is now ranked 3rd in the country, undefeated at 10-0. That's valid. And they were, both close games, so that's another point. But I will say this. You're not going to tell me in the same breath that Miami is a quality loss for Notre Dame. You're not going to tell me in the same breath that that's a quality loss and then tell me that Notre Dame deserves to be ranked ahead of Miami. Yes, I understand Miami loss, the losses of Miami, the loss to SMU, and I understand it, but I'm not going to hear it, because you're contradicting yourself here when you say, well, Notre Dame's got better losses. Okay, well, one of those losses is to Miami, right? So you can't have your cake and eat it too in that scenario, where you can say, well, Notre Dame has better losses, but they lost to Miami, but Miami's not that good. They don't belong ahead of Notre Dame in the rankings, or they don't belong anywhere near where they're pretty good ways apart. Speaking of the rankings, we'll get into that. New rankings just dropped Tuesday night, so we'll get into that and count 25 down to 1 like we always do. Not a whole lot of discrepancies in this one. I genuinely tend to agree with this set of rankings more than I did maybe a few weeks ago with the initial ones and then the ones after. I will say there is a dispute there for me as far as the Notre Dame Miami argument. There will continue to be a dispute, but it's not going to really matter when it's all said and done. Notre Dame's still going to be there and in the playoff, unless they just have this epic collapse, here towards the end of the season against whatever subpar competition they're playing. That will happen. That will work itself out. If it's going to be so, but it will not. Notre Dame's going to finish the season at 10-2. They're going to be well inside the top 10. They're going to be well on their way to a playoff berth. Another one. So I've learned that it doesn't matter. Last year, I complained about the Northern Illinois loss. Didn't matter. They made it to the playoff. This year, they're going to do the same thing. So I don't think I properly welcomed you. Welcome back After the Whistle. It's episode 58 in total, episode 58. Previewing week 13 here. Week 13, this is the prediction show on Thursday that I always do. Be sure to lock into the social media, like I just mentioned a minute ago, at ATWCFB on Instagram and also Facebook, same handle. Always be sure to hit the follow button on those two platforms. That's the one I do the most business on. I really just use Twitter to troll people. So unless you like that kind of thing, don't follow me on Twitter. That's fine. I normally use Twitter to troll people. Don't have many followers, but I just love getting on there and get people riled up, seeing what I can, see what kind of anger I can extract out of people. It's a glorious thing sometimes. Also, likewise on that, if you're tuning in to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Podcast, or Apple Podcast, or Amazon Music, appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure if you are listening on one of those platforms, the show is available on other platforms. That is, though, those four are the most popular listening platforms this show has. So be sure to, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show if you're on YouTube. Follow the show. You'll get the updates. Every time a new episode drops, you will get a notification on your phone. So be sure to stay connected and stay in the know when it comes to that. All right. So moving into first order of business, we're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings, the new edition of the rankings that just came out, which the CFP towards the end of the year, it's the only thing that matters. I'm not going to cover the AP or the coaches poll or anything like that. We're going to cover the CFP. We're going to start at 25, and that is the Arizona State Sun Devils. Welcome back to the show. They're in the land of the ranked. Tulane, kind of a surprise. I'm not going to lie. Tulane at 24, a little bit of a surprise with James Madison hanging out there. Was kind of shocked to see this one. But, not surprised, but also, surprised, but then on the same side, not. And if that makes any sense, I just tripped myself up on that. Houston ranked 23rd, Mizzou 22, Illinois at 21. All five of those teams not ranked going into this set of rankings. Tennessee jumps 3 spots to 20. Virginia at 19, Michigan at 18, they stay put. Texas drops all the way back to 17th in these rankings. Georgia Tech at 16th, fraudulent. 15, we have USC up 2 spots. Vanderbilt at 14. Miami at 13, so Miami's making some ground up, 2 spots. Utah at 12. BYU at 11. Bama drops 6 spots after the loss to Oklahoma, drops to 10th. Notre Dame remains where they were at 9. Oklahoma jumps 3 spots to 8. Oregon at 7. Ole Miss at 6. Texas Tech at 5. Georgia at 4. Texas A&M 3. Indiana at 2. Ohio State at 1. All right, so one talking point that I have seen a lot, and I know you have too. You've seen it maybe on ESPN. Maybe you've heard it if you listen to a lot of the same college football podcasts that I listen to on a daily basis. You've probably heard this talking point over the last few weeks, maybe a greater portion of the season. You've heard that the gap between Ohio State and everyone else is large, wide, whatever you want to call it. And this narrative, I feel like it's one of those narratives that always comes up every single year. Doesn't matter who's on top. A few years ago, it was Georgia. Everybody's talking about how far and away Georgia was better than everybody else. Turns out that team ended up winning a national championship by 58 points. So there was there was definitely a lot of merit to those conversations back then. Likewise, that team also had a few games during the year where they had to battle adversity. And here's where we come into the Ohio State argument, and here's where I sit on it. I will 100% not argue the fact that Ohio State's the best team in the country. I feel like they are. Like I said last week's episode, Ohio State's got the best off-ball linebacker in the country in Arvell Reese, the best DB in Caleb Downs, and then they also have, you could make the argument they have the best quarterback, and you could also make the argument they have the best 2 receivers. By far the best receiving duo in college football in Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. So they've got just a lot of these playmakers. But here's the thing, and I hearken back to a quote, one of my favorite quotes of all time, and I love using this in, certain circumstances like this when it calls for it, and that is the infamous Mike Tyson. Iron Mike said once that every man has a plan until he gets punched in the mouth. And the question that relates, or the question and why I tie that into talking about Ohio State is, they have not played a team yet this year that can trade blow for blow, punch them in the mouth, so to speak. They haven't had that yet. I mean, this weekend they have Rutgers coming up. So, it's not really when you look at the schedule, they started the season with Texas. That's been by far their toughest test of the football season so far. They played Grambling, Ohio, Washington, Minnesota, an overranked Illinois team at the time, Wisconsin, Penn State that didn't have their coach, couldn't match them talent-wise, coach is gone, everything, all the storylines, Purdue and UCLA. So we really don't know, and I will put Texas A&M in the same boat with Ohio State here and say we just don't really know how good these teams are. And I'll agree that both teams are good, but we don't know what we don't know. So therefore, I'm not going to contribute to the talking point that I don't agree with, and that is that it is number 1 Ohio State, and then there is a gigantic fall off before you get to number 2 Indiana. I just do not think that's true. Now, regardless of how I feel about Ohio State and Indiana's matchup that is coming up hopefully here in just a few weeks, regardless, we will talk about that when conference championship weekend comes up if they make it. That's the if, because we all know, Ohio State got to be careful there in against Michigan. So I'm saying if. I think they will make the conference championship game, but I'm saying if, because I don't want Michigan fans, getting all, what about us? What about us? Okay. Pipe down, Junior. Okay. But here's what I will say about that. Like I said, they have not, either of these teams, A&M and Ohio State, haven't played a team that can punch them in the mouth and match them physically. I mean, you look at Ohio State's schedule, they haven't had to play Oregon. You look at a lot of the top half of the Big Ten, those top teams, the Indiana and the Oregon and all, haven't played them in the regular season. Likewise, on the flip side of that coin, when you look at Texas A&M, all of Texas A&M's SEC opponents are bottom half of the SEC, bottom feeder SEC teams. We have not seen A&M play in Alabama. We've not seen A&M play a Georgia and Oklahoma. We've not seen that. So it's hard for us to gauge how good these teams are because we just don't have the sample size against quality competition. I'll agree that both teams are good. I'm not saying don't go running off and saying, well, Kobe doesn't think Texas A&M and Ohio State's any good. That's not what I said. Don't twist my words. What I'm saying is we just don't know. And we don't know what we don't know. We'll find out, yes, as the season gets longer, the competition gets more and more difficult for both of these teams. So we definitely something we keep an eye on there. All right, so big coaching news James Franklin is now the head coach at Virginia Tech. Hear Enter Sandman playing in the background, and all that. We don't play Metallica on this show because Metallica apparently likes to sue people for copyright infringement. So we're not going to play Enter Sandman. So we're not going to do that. Anyway, so I feel like this is a really good move for James Franklin because I feel like if you watch the press conference inning of him getting introduced as the head coach, I feel like he's a genuine guy. I feel like he's a really good guy. I feel like we saw a side of James Franklin today. You saw him get emotional in the press conference, saw him talking about Brent Pry, started crying a little bit, recalling the fact that Brent Pry's father was James Franklin's offensive coordinator when he was in college, so it all kind of comes full circle, ties in. It's just a really cool story. And you saw the rawness of a guy like James Franklin, who has probably been, through the ringer mentally over the last few weeks since he got fired from a job I'm sure he loved at Penn State, and has been through the ringer mentally, probably no telling what he's heard about himself, online of people trashing him and talking about him. And now here he is with another chance at Virginia Tech. I feel like he's going to do great there. And, just because of the fact that just the pride and the level of physicality that he will bring to that program. We know he can recruit. We've seen how he recruits at a state college over the years, 11 years, I believe, in state college. So we've seen how he's able to recruit, and he's able to get really good athletes in there. And I don't see any reason why he will not be successful at Virginia Tech, because the ACC, as we have seen this year, just not as strong as of a conference. You know, I saw somebody saying, and I know they meant this as a slight to James Franklin, but there's a lot of truth to it, and we're not going to James Franklin's one of those guys I'm really not going to bash too much. I think he's a great human being. I think he's a good coach. I think just things weren't working out. Sometimes a change of scenery benefits guys like that. But somebody posted something, and I know they meant it as a slight. I know they meant it, but he could do the same thing that he did at Penn State, and they'd build a statue for him in Blacksburg. And when you really think about it, he goes into Blacksburg and he wins 10 games a year, which is pretty much what he was winning on average at Penn State. Say he coaches there 20 years. Say he gets 200 wins. That's big time. You know, that's big time in Blacksburg, Virginia, especially with a school that doesn't have, and this is not a knock on Virginia Tech. I think it's a great program. Historically, it's been a good program. You know, you got a guy like Frank Beamer coach there as long as he did. Just a legend of the game. What I will say is, though, that they don't have the expectations that Penn State does. Penn State's got lofty expectations. They've got, you know, win the Big Ten, beat Ohio State, beat Penn State, you know, whoever's playing them in the Big Ten championship. Then go on to the college football playoff, win a national championship. I mean, let's not get it twisted. This was a guy that was a couple plays away from playing for a national championship last year. So it's not like this fall from grace. You know, he's had good years. Last year, he's a few plays away from playing for a national championship, and then now he's fired. Now he's at another job. I think he's going to do great there, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. I feel like they've got the resources for him to do well. He's in a conference that's generally not as competitive as the conference he's coming from. He's going to bring a level of physicality to that organization, that school, and that team that they haven't seen in a while. And so I think he's going to do. I think he's going to do really good. So, another report that came out, and we're going to get through some headlines because, like I said, this is kind of cupcake weekend for a lot of teams. So there's not a lot of games to talk about here, but we have 4 or 5, I think, that I pulled, you know, to predict. But for now, we got to get through some storylines because there's been a lot, you know, over the last few days and week. And there was a report comes out now. Lane Kiffin has said that it's false, but that Ole Miss gave him essentially an ultimatum and told him that he needed to make up his mind on his future before the Egg Bowl, you know, here in a couple weeks. And, you know, he's got a bye week this week, and, you know, there's LSU, Florida have been, you know, really on the hunt for Lane Kiffin. There's been a lot of rumors out there about his family flying into Baton Rouge, flying into Gainesville. There's been plane trackers. There's been this. Everybody feels like they're going to get Lane Kiffin. I mean, I feel like every coaching job out there thinks they have a shot at Lane Kiffin. What I will say is, you know, it's not like Lane Kiffin's been a poster child for us taking him at his word, I guess you could say. But comes out and says the reports are false, that he was not given an ultimatum by Ole Miss. I would think if that were to happen, that would be kind of crazy. And I've seen Ole Miss fans on message boards saying, leave it up to Lane to make this whole season about himself, one of the best seasons that Ole Miss has ever had, and make it about himself. And I will say to those Ole Miss fans, you better be careful with that narrative, because it seems to me like Lane loves it there in Oxford. Lane loves coaching there. Lane maybe loves the opportunity that he sees there. But a fan base that will make remarks like that or anything, or will harass a coach or whatever, you run him off into the arms of someone else, a better suitor perhaps in LSU or Florida. So we have to be careful with the way we word that, and we have to be careful with that rhetoric. And what I will say is I know that here over the last few weeks it's been a crazy, you know, carousel with Lane Kiffin. It's been the sweepstakes. It's been, for a minute there, LSU was kind of the betting favorite, the front runner. And then we had some issue, you know, you had some issues with the governor of Louisiana. You had some issues with the athletic director getting fired. And then there was a lot of drama surrounding the buyout with Brian Kelly and how LSU was trying to deny him his buyout and this. Lane Kiffin's watching all of that. Don't get me wrong. But then you have, you know, Florida. Not a whole lot of drama surrounding Florida. I feel like Florida was, you know, about a week or so ago, I feel like Florida's the more appealing job, you know, by chance. They could also remain at Ole Miss. I don't know what's going to happen, guys. At this point, it's like flip a coin, rock, paper, scissors, whatever. I really don't know. I'd love to have insider information. Like some of these, podcasts claim that they have somebody on the inside that's feeding them intel saying, he's going here. Yeah, you're full of crap. Like we're not, like you seriously think that a person that records a college football podcast that's like me, for example, you really think I have an insider in Gainesville or in Baton Rouge that's going to tell me no? And most other podcasters don't either. I mean, you have the big names, you have the Josh Pates, and you have guys like that. Sure, they have their sources. But the little guys like me that are, self-funded, no sponsors, no anything like that, we don't have insiders. It's opinion-based. So, I don't know where he's going. I mean, do you go one route, deal with the drama? Do you go one route and deal with Florida fans? That says all I need to say. Or do you go with, do you just stay in Oxford? I mean, you keep doing what you're doing. You win 10, 11 games a year, every single year. They'll build a statue for you within the next 5 years. Like, guy that's adored by the fan base. But here over the last few days, I've seen some message board posts that have really concerned me about that fan base. And it's like, better be careful. That's all I'm saying, Ole Miss fans. Be careful about how you're going to, approach that. Just be grateful for the time he's there. You don't have to, you can't be sitting here and talking about how, he's making it about himself. He's being selfish. He's being, whatever else. Don't, all I'm saying is be careful. All right. So another thing, Kirby's mixtape, when's it dropping? Anybody know? Because, telling you that the man has been dropping bars this week. Bars. So we'll play the clip here. Here is Kirby Smart talking about players that decide to transfer away from the University of Georgia and his thoughts on it. I'm let y'all hear this if you haven't heard it already.
We schedule them. The ones that want to leave, we schedule them. We try to get them on the schedule because when they want to leave because they're not physical, that means they're probably going to a place that's not physical. We like those places. We like to play them. We prefer them, actually, if you can get them on the schedule. So,
man, you imagine that. Like, you leave Georgia, go to another school. Former head coach is like, where are you going again? I'm going to put you on the schedule. Because Kirby's basically saying, hey, Kendrick Lamar song, not like us, they not like us. That's what Kirby's saying right here. Kirby's just dropping them on the table, so to speak, here. Like, this right here, that is the reason Georgia wins. That's the reason. You want to know? You can call it cockiness, you can call it arrogance, you can call it whatever you want. That's the reason Georgia wins, is the attitude. The attitude matches the physicality in Athens, and they mirror their head coach, and that's why they're so successful. Another line Kirby drops, this week is talking about players getting paid, essentially, in college football. Talking about players getting a check. Y'all saw this shortly after the game on Saturday. We'll play this one as well for you. Let y'all hear this one if you haven't heard it already.
what we do in practice, it's what we do in the off season, it's what we build our core culture around, is being the more physical team. And you have to recruit physical players, and they have to buy into that process. I don't know that a lot of these kids nowadays, they want to check. They don't want physicality. And if you have the check and no physicality, you end up with nothing. So we're not just getting checks at our place. We're hitting people.
Love it. It's no secret I'm a Georgia fan, but that's my head coach, man. Chill bumps hearing that. Like, if there's anything that you can hear that makes you just want to, yes, like, clap your hands, like, let's give them, like, yes. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that's our coach. That's the coach right there. Like, in a day and age where players are looking for instant gratification via a check, via cash, via whatever, this man says, hey, we're not just getting a check, we're hitting people. Like, you're going to earn it, essentially. Like, you still have to recruit physical players, but you bring the guys in that want to be physical. That's exactly why Kirby is in the position that he's in. That's why he's consistently in the position that he's in, and that's why he will continue to be in the position that he's in. So here's another thing. One more talking point, then we'll get into the predictions. I know that's why y'all tune in on Thursday. Y'all, maybe you tune in to hear me talk about controversial topics. I don't know. But let's talk about one thing. So another bit of news broke this week that representatives from the Big Ten, go figure, have said that they are wanting to and willing to expand the playoff to 24 teams. And what I say to that is no. Short answer, no. Not no, but you know what I mean. You know where I'm going with that, right? Okay, so here's the thing here's the problem I have with it. I don't think on any given year you have 5 or 6 teams that can win a national championship. I know I've said that before on this show, and I've gotten some heat for it. I've had some people call me out on it and say, nah, man, you've got probably 8, 10 teams. No, you do not. You don't. On a good year, you can make the argument for 7 or 8 teams that are good enough to win the national championship. To me, it's 5 or 6. To me, 4 was not enough. 12's too many. 12's too many. 12, just you add in the the participation trophy for the group of 5 team. You add that in there. To me, 8 would have been great. Like 8 was good. You got, 8 teams. 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, all that. You go on and so forth. If you want a group of 5 to be included, have your own group of 5 national championship. That's what I'm saying. Have 8 teams from the Power 4 that have their national championship. Have 8 teams from the group of 5 that have their national championship. Who says no? How's that for playoff expansion? Sound pretty fair? Because I feel like a group of 5, you got 8 teams, and it's like needles, like razor thin difference between the first and the 8th group of 5 team on most Saturdays anyway. I mean, you got teams like James Madison that look very dominant this year, and sometimes you have teams like Memphis that look good until they screw me on my parlay last week, which we'll not even talk about that. Still salty, by the way. But there's 8 teams that you can get into, you have, say, Friday nights, whatever night, you have the group of 5 games. Then you have the Power 4 games on the weekend. Who says no? That's my idea for playoff expansion, not 24 teams. That would be way too many blowouts. Like, we're not going to do it. Think about that for a second. Ohio State plays Arizona State. Dear God, man, you talk about a bloodbath. Like, 8 teams, let it ride. But they'll never change it. They'll never change it to go to less teams. I'd like for them, if anything, they just keep it at 12. Just keep it at 12. Do away with the auto bids. Top 12 seeds, done. Do away with the group of 5 bid. All that. Like, that's how we handle it. But, I'm not going to get my way because I feel like the more games, the more money. I feel like it's all financially backed. So I feel like they think, oh, if we have 24 teams, that equals more games, which equals more ticket sales, which equals more TV sales, which was more money. Just more and more and more and more. And that's why eventually I do think they will expand the playoff, against my wishes and against a lot of college football fans that I've talked to wishes. It's just not going to happen like that. Another thing, too, real quick that I'm going to touch on, and I'm going to take 30 seconds to say this. The college football coaches going to the NFL thing, just shut up. Like, quit even talking about it. Kirby Smart to the Falcons is what I saw this past week on some message board. Like, dude, no. Go check yourself into an insane asylum if you think that's possible. That's not happening. And that's like literally taking a man that's eating steak every night and saying, hey, man, you want some of this canned meat over here? It's called Spam. Come get some. No, he's not leaving Georgia for the Atlanta Falcons job. Next. Steve Sarkisian's not leaving Texas for the Tennessee Titans job. Just stop. Like, Texas can pay him more money than the Tennessee Titans can. And likewise, it's the same analogy that I just made. Guy's eating steak and you're asking him to go eat canned Spam. No, get out of here. Man, that's just every year you have to see it. It's stupid. All right, so get the paper out. About to do some predictions. Let's get into it. So first game we're going to talk about, and interesting little spot here. Missouri at Oklahoma. Going to Norman. Tricky spot for Oklahoma. Letdown spot potentially. I put on my notes, letdown spot with a question mark. Because you come off a big win. We've seen it time and time again. And history sometimes has a way of repeating itself, especially in college football. But you come off of a letdown spot. Or not a letdown spot. You come off of this enormous high of beating Alabama. Now you're ranked 8th in the country. You control your own destiny. All you got to do is just win out. You are in the playoff. Brent Venables takes the pay cut to starts the year, backs it up on the field, says, y'all just give me one more chance, cut my pay. We got one more year. Here they are in the driver's seat. They just got to keep it between the lines here. The question is, can they keep it between the lines against a Missouri squad? And Missouri's one of those teams earlier in the year, they looked really good, had a really good rushing attack. Defensive stats were a little bit inflated because of the fact they weren't playing quality competition. So everybody bought into the fact this Missouri defense is legit. They were good on paper, but weren't like overwhelmingly good. This wasn't like a, Oklahoma defense this year. It wasn't like, one of these just generational type defenses that we've seen over the last few years. But people wanted to act like it. And so I don't see a scenario to me where Missouri goes into Norman, Oklahoma, and pulls this off. I really don't, because the strength-on-strength matchup that we've got to think about here, Missouri with a freshman quarterback, Matt Zollers, with Bo Pribula being out for the rest of the season, they don't have that veteran leadership at the quarterback position. They're relying heavily on the run game and Ahmad Hardy. Now, Ahmad Hardy gashed Mississippi State last weekend. Just, I think, 300-plus yards. Gashed them. But here's the thing. The biggest issue here is the strength of one team is the strength of another. And the strength of Missouri, running the football with Ahmad Hardy, you're running right into the teeth of that Oklahoma defense. That Oklahoma defense that is ranked 4th in the country in rush yards given up per game at 82. They're 8th in scoring, 11th overall in defensive statistics. So Missouri's offense, when you look at it, not very good on the pass, and a lot of that's credit to the fact that they do have that freshman quarterback back there in Zollers, no more Pribula, but they weren't really throwing the ball very well with Pribula in there anyway. I mean, this has always been a very run-heavy style offense. I mean, 6th in the country in that department, averaging 241 yards a game. So, that's why, I don't even want to say leaning Oklahoma here, because I just don't feel like the big key here is Oklahoma's offense. We've seen an Oklahoma team that can play defense that looks really good on that side of the football, obviously. But Oklahoma's offense just struggles scoring points. Now, could this be a low-scoring rock fight style football game? Potentially. It just depends on what version of John Mateer shows up, what version of the Oklahoma offense shows up, what plays Ben Arbuckle calls. But if you want to look at any of the areas, I mean, Missouri statistically, you look like on paper, 10th in yards given up per game on defense, 15th in pass yards given up, 17th against the rush, 25th in scoring. Like, you look at them on paper, it's like, man, this might be a little bit of a defensive struggle. So I'm thinking Oklahoma wins this football game. I've got Oklahoma winning this by 10 points. I'm going to go 23-13 Sooners in Norman, and they get their 9th win of the season against the Missouri Tigers. So I've got to have Oklahoma covering. After that performance, I don't feel like it's a letdown spot for them. I feel like they get the job done against a Missouri team that has been underwhelming pretty much all year. So moving on to the next one, we've got my upset pick of the week, and I know y'all are anxious to hear this one. So let's talk about it a little bit. We've got Pittsburgh going on the road, playing in Atlanta, and playing the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Here's the thing with Pitt. Okay, we look at this Pitt passing attack. 14th in the country, averaging about 287 yards a game. Pitt's defense as well, kind of surprising. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago on another show where I picked, I had Pitt, a game that Pitt was playing in, and I picked that game. Pitt top 10 in rush yards given up. So you look at this. This is another matchup, strength on strength here. Georgia Tech, what do they do well on offense? Well, 10th in the country in rush yards per game, 224, 225 yards a game. And led really by, Haynes King. This is the motor of this Georgia Tech offense, really of this Georgia Tech team, because the defense is terrible. Like, this is a defense that when you look at them across the board, they're about 100th or worse in every single metric that you look at. I mean, yards given up per game over 400, 105th against the pass, 97th against the run, 71st in scoring, just terrible defense. The key metric that sticks out for me here is there's two things that have to happen in order for Pitt to pull the upset here. Pitt has to take advantage of a Georgia Tech secondary that is horrendous, terrible. You got to take advantage of that, and you have to stop the run, mainly the quarterback run, because that's the one you really got to watch out for with Haynes King. He's got currently 807 yards on the year, 148 carries, 14 touchdowns. A lot of people are putting him in the Heisman, in the Heisman race. He's actually got odds to win the Heisman. I can't remember what ranked is for best odds, but he's in there. And it's had a great season. He's a warrior, the gamer. I think you've seen Georgia Tech kind of fall off a little bit as far as they looked a lot better earlier in the season. They peaked kind of a little bit, and then now they're starting to fall a little bit, mainly because of the fact that I feel like Haynes King and the wear and tear on his body starting to kind of show. There's only so much one kid can do like that, and I feel like you're seeing Georgia Tech kind of slow down a little bit. For that reason, I think Georgia Tech kind of gets caught off guard here on Saturday night. I feel like Pitt gets a big win. I think it's going to be high scoring here. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this game is going to be high scoring. I'm going to go Pitt. No, I say high scoring, but I'm going to go 41-38 Pitt in this one. I've got a lot of offense in this football game. I think Georgia Tech does get their licks in as far as attacking this Pitt run defense, but I think Pitt's pass offense also is able to put up points and move the ball down the field. And I'm going to go with the upset, 41-38 Pitt over Georgia Tech. So that is my upset pick of the week, and I probably did kind of spoil that before I even picked it, but oh well. Big 12 matchup, BYU at Cincinnati. This is the chance for Cincinnati to prove to me that they are who I think they are. They've been a really good team at times this year with Brendan Sorsby, who at one point was getting a little bit of Heisman love, was putting up some just crazy numbers. Still on the year, though, 2,200 yards, 21 touchdowns, 4 picks. The issue with Brendan Sorsby is the inaccuracies, particularly down the field. Completing 59.8% of his passes. I think he's the down the field percentage is terrible. So the keys in this game, good quarterback matchup here, Bear Bachmeier, Brendan Sorsby. That's the matchup that I'm really going to be paying attention to here. BYU currently favored 2.5 points. Both of these teams pretty good against the spread this year. BYU 7-3 against the spread. Cincinnati 6-4 against the spread. BYU coming into this football game with the 22nd ranked rushing offense. Cincinnati's offense coming in with the 21st. So both of these teams really like to run the football. Both of them right around there in scoring, 34-ish points a game for both these football teams. I think this is a game where you see a pretty good bit of scoring. You see not a whole lot of defense being played. But here's the one key area I think to watch, penalty yardage. Cincinnati, I've been critical of them at times when I've talked about them this year so far. 130th in the FBS. Averaging 69 penalty yards a game. So that's an area that I'm really concerned with if I'm Cincinnati. But BYU, 45th, so not much better. these stats, they're not separated by a very large margin there. Red zone defense, big, strong area for both teams. BYU 10th in the country, Cincinnati currently 14th in the country. So BYU at 73% of trips, giving up points, 75% for Cincinnati. So both teams strong, bend, don't break style defense. They're going to give up a lot of yards between the 20s. And then once they hit that red area, they kind of buckle down and get to work. The time of possession, this is the big area to me where BYU wins this football game. Here's why. And it's because BYU averages over 32 minutes of time of possession per game. Cincinnati, 24. That's 136th in the country. Cincinnati does not hold the ball very long, and that's the issue. We've seen Cincinnati get beat by teams this year, and the main thing that sticks out on paper is the fact that the other team held the ball and just basically played keep away from Sorsby, from Walker, and Cyrus Allen. Just kept away from them. That's where BYU wins this football game. They've got to play keep away from Cincinnati. You don't really want to get into a scoring contest in this game, I don't think. But either way, I'm gonna actually kind of, this might be another upset pick. I'm gonna roll with Cincinnati in this one. I think BYU is a tad fraudulent. I've said it. I really like Bear Bachmeier. I like this BYU team. I'm just not a big believer in them, really. I've got Cincinnati pulling a little bit of an upset here. I'm going to go Cincinnati 33, BYU 30 in this contest. So Cincinnati, a team that had a lot better hopes for in the Big 12, than what they've looked. Just the 3 losses they've had, they've been ugly for the most part. Just a little bit of redemption spot for Cincinnati in this one. So one game I know a lot of people are going to be like, man, why are you even talking about this one? But here's the reason. Anybody that's followed the SEC long enough, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this one because I know it's not a marquee matchup. It's not a ranked-on-ranked matchup or anything like that. There's no real playoff implications at stake here. What I will say is this, though. There's a lot of weird stuff. Tune in Saturday night at 7:30 because there's always weird stuff happening in the Tennessee and Florida game. Tennessee going on the road to the Swamp at night. Florida, a team with nothing to lose. Going to pull out all the stops. Lagway at quarterback. A little bit of a pretty good quarterback matchup here. DJ Lagway versus Joey Aguilar. And at times, DJ Lagway's shown the flash this year, and at times, he's looked horrible. So, which version of DJ Lagway do you going to get? You going to get the Jekyll version? You going to get the Hyde version? We'll find out one way or another, I guess, on Saturday night. But, both of these teams, there's been some really weird stuff happen in this rivalry over the years. Keep a close eye on this one. Not going to pick it, just saying. Eyes on the quarterback matchup here. Florida, Tennessee. Tennessee's kind of got this spot where Tennessee can win, go to 8-3. They're not fighting for a playoff spot or anything like that. They're just kind of fighting for pride. They're fighting to get that number beside their name to grow just more and more, or get lower and lower, get to a decent bowl, finish the season out that way. Florida, nothing but pride. 3-7, no chance of making a bowl. Florida's just playing for pride. Maybe they can. The only thing Florida can really play for here is maybe you can not really ruin Tennessee's season, but maybe you can do a little damage to their ego, do a little damage to their pride a little bit, maybe knock them out. They're ranked 20th, maybe knock them out of the top 25. I think that's what the Gators should aim to do because there's nothing else to really play for. All right, so game of the week. After the Whistles, game of the week this year is the USC at Oregon, and the weather report looks not very promising for USC going on the road to Autzen Stadium. We saw this Oregon team in a messy contest here a couple weeks ago against Iowa. Dan Lanning, sicko, man, talking about he wears a cotton hoodie when it's raining outside because he wants to be in the fight with his guys. Who doesn't want to play for a guy like that? This game here is going to come down to, there's a lot of great matchups in this football game. And when you go over it and you look at USC's offense and compare that with Oregon's defense, and you look at the two, Oregon's defense, number 1 rated defense in the country against the pass. USC, the 10th ranked passing offense in the country, 10th In scoring on offense for USC, Oregon's 6th scoring defense. Strength on strength matchup. Who's going to break first? Who's going to break who? Who's going to break the will of the other? That's key area here is what it's going to come down to. Oregon's offense, though, not too shabby as well. Top 10 in rushing, top 10 in overall offense a game, 475 yards a game for the Ducks on average. So this is a game I feel like we're going to get a track meet, or we're going to get, kind of like a game we got with Iowa and Oregon. If the weather is in fact going to be that bad, which the report looks kind of gloomy right now, if the weather is actually going to be that bad, what is it going to come down to? Both of these teams can run the football decently well. USC with King Miller, Oregon with Noah Whittington. So it's really hard to pick this game. It's kind of a coin flip game for me. That's kind of where I'm at. And I didn't flip a coin for this game. I just kind of went with my gut on this. I mean, both teams are really good on third down. Oregon 14th in the country, USC 8th in the country in that department. Neither team is really penalized that well or that often. Both teams in the top 20 penalties a game. So both teams pretty disciplined. An area that's concerned for me that I highlighted in my notes right here. Oregon is 132nd in the country in red zone defense. We talk about the Oregon defense. We talk about the fact that they're really good against the pass. They're good. They're a good scoring defense. They're third in overall yards given up. But when we talk about the fact that they're allowing opponents to score on 94.4% of trips in the red zone, that can be a problem. USC's offense, one of the best in the country in that regard in scoring when they get to the red area. You got guys like Jaden Maiava, you got Mekhi Lemon. When you've got those athletes, when you got the talent that you do, scoring is going to be, I don't think it's going to be that tough once they get to that red area. Oregon's going to have to focus on stopping USC before the red area. Stop them around the middle of the field. Play that field position game. That's what you're going to have to do. What this game came down to for me, and I'll tell you a couple key areas it came down to. When I look at these two teams, I analyze them as far as the numbers go. I don't feel like either team has that much of a statistical advantage, so to speak. So when I look at these games, I look at trust. Oregon currently favored by 9.5 points in this spot. Vegas knows something a lot of people don't hear. That's a big line for this kind of a matchup between number 15 and number 7. 9.5 points. I feel like a lot of that is the Eugene swing. That Eugene swing playing in Autzen Stadium, I feel like that's a factor. I also feel like the fact that I can trust Dan Lanning's defense. Now, can you trust Lincoln Riley's offense? I feel like you can. Don't get me wrong, a great offensive play caller, but I just trust Dan Lanning's ability to coach the defense, make adjustments, get things done like that more than I trust Lincoln Riley's ability to coach the offense. Historically, we have seen USC choke away these spots. I think they do it again. I think that Oregon beats USC. Score, though, I don't have Oregon covering. In this spot. I've got Oregon winning this football game 27-20. Oregon over USC. I like this to be a little bit more of a back and forth ebbs and flows type football game. I like Oregon's defense ultimately be the deciding factor in this football game. I like for maybe, and I'm getting a little bit too into the weeds here, but I like for maybe USC to get the ball back with a chance to tie it up. And I like Oregon to make a key defensive stop to deny them from doing so and winning a Big Ten contest. Because I think a lot of people are sleeping on Oregon. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Dan Lanning. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Dante Moore, DeCorian Moore. That defense is nothing to shake a stick at either. So keep an eye on Oregon. I got Oregon over USC in that contest. All right, guys. Well, thank y'all for tuning in once again. It's been another episode of After the Whistle. Can't stress how much I appreciate y'all. Episode 58. We've come a long way. For long, I'll be saying episode 100. That'll be pretty cool, but that's a ways off. Don't get me wrong, it's a ways off. But here we are, week 13, bringing the plane in for a landing. The landing gear is out, coming in. Everybody's making that final playoff push, going into conference championship week, going into the college football playoff. Everybody trying to jockeying for position there Exciting time around college football. Can't wait to watch the rest of the season unfold. Can't wait to watch this weekend unfold, even though we do have a lot of Cupcake games on the schedule. We do have some good ones. Like always, enjoy the football, enjoy your weekend, grill something, drink something, cold beverage preferably. And I will catch y'all on Monday as we recap all the action. We'll see y'all.